So let's do. Okay, Rabbi Katz. I'm very excited to spend some time with you, and I have to tell you the feedback we're getting is really amazing. We're getting a lot of positive feedback, and people who are searching, people are looking for more, and Hashem should help us all, guide us all where we have to go. Just for a little
Amen.
bit of clarification, for some people who I would say just need to hear a little bit more of these ideas, and I think it's a good opportunity.
Sure.
A good opportunity. So one,
I just want to say, Coach Menachem, I just want to say kol kavod because it's what you're doing is more than just a show. I mean, you're creating discussion. We're dealing with hot topics and difficult subjects and challenging subjects. We're all Yerei Shemayim. We're trying to solve them together. So I think it's really beautiful that it's more than just a show or podcast or program. That's why I'm here as well, because we're opening up difficult things and let's talk about them and let's have chaboras talk about them, and getting the interaction back from the chaver was wonderful as well. So I love that idea that it's really more not just a show; it's more like a chabura discussion for Klai Yisrael. So
yeah.
wonderful. Here
So
we are. Let's
people
talk.
are searching. So any new idea, people would like, okay, wait a second, I haven't seen this, and we mentioned it on the show about Messiah, but Bechlal Yiddishkeit, we're in Galus for many years, and many people like we're called Am Kshei Oref. This is why we're still here, no matter what, and we're continuing. For many people, so the truth is, in my practice, I see two types of people. There are people who are working very hard and they're learning and they're trying. There are those who are totally shut down already.
Hmm.
And shut down meaning maybe not even learning anymore, not even trying to look into these things. But even if they are, they see in this forum that no matter what, they should continue because this is what Hashem wants. It might be the Nisayan. And they even have this concept that you might not feel connection, dvekus, your whole life.
Hmm.
And when they see that, maybe it gives them a little bit of chizik. But when you come and discuss with them, there is a way. There is something out there. And whichever way it is, whether it's his budgetus or something new, psychedelic, which most people are not used to, and automatically they start to say, wait a second, I have to hold on tight. How can I let go? And that probably takes us to the next topic. Who should they discuss it? The Rav, I don't know if the Rav are going to exactly understand this. So here we are, something new. How should they accept it? They don't see it in a sefer. Or
So well, let's begin. Well, I could talk for 2 hours on what you just brought up. Then Aleph. The most important thing is to say there's a lot of Torah that we have today, and a lot of Torah is about who are we to necessarily need Devakus, his lavis. This is not us. This is not the end of Golis. This is not our Madrega. But there's something called the Muna Peshuta, and there's something we go through life, and we find Simcha what we can. And this is where we're up to in our door and our Madrega. So I want to say something. I believe that got built in to our Hashkafa and our language as a consequence after 2,000 years of trauma and exile and expulsion and Holocaust and pogrom. So that's where we're all up to today. And people need validation for where they're up to. I've never found a kesha, emotional, spiritual, energetically to Torah. I do it because it's the right thing to do. I think it's a better system than the alternative. My tati did it, his tati did it, Bubba, Zaydis, etc. So that's fine. So it's very empowering to validate someone for where they're up to in their struggle. You don't have to be more than you are. You can be, Hashem loves you and we love you and accept you for you. That's a wonderful thing. In some sense, it's validating, but in some days, it's exceptionally limiting and trapping and condemning. Because the truth is, we are B'nai Nevi'im, we have cheshik, we desire kavanim in our tefillah, we desire to increase our amun and b'tachon. And of course, how many shirim about increasing amun and b'tachon? How many shirim about the importance of kavanim and tefillah? So I can validate how low I am and validate how low we all are, but I'm still getting, mixed messages, which is good. I should be of what I should have a she'ifa, a cheshik for something much greater. So we don't really know. So first of all, we have to be careful with the shkafa we give. Validating our lowliness and is different from saying that that's all we can achieve. And it's very, very clear already from Chassidus and the times before Chassidus, especially from the Tekuf of Chassidus, as the Baal Shem Tov and other Tzaddikim said, there was a new Pesach, a new opening, an Or Chadash that's coming in, which would allow many, many people to access these tools, to really become B'nai Eliyah in the deepest sense of the word. And I believe, as the Vilna Gaon discusses, the Baal Shem Tov discusses, as I brought sources, and there's many other sources, I believe there's opportunity, there's blessing, there's bracha, there's new hashpah is coming in to teach us how to do that. To remind us, forget about the psychedelics. 2/3 of what I discussed in my opening presentation was about Tikkun Midas and Devekus and Islavus and Kavana and Amunah. Let's just start there. Let's be honest, Coach Menachem. What I've talked about those sugyas alone for 10, 15 years, there's many of the chevra who are already triggered by that. Who do you say that we can? Why does Doniel Katz think you get Doniel Katz? Doniel Katz doesn't mean anything in the sugya. All of every Hasidic sefer, the Hasidim Rishonim, the original Talmidei Baal Shem Tov, they're all talking about this from beginning to end. They're all talking about this is the thing that's coming to our door. So I think we have to say we do have a desire to acknowledge our stuckness, which is important psychologically. Validation, as you know, as a coach, validation is unbelievably important. But to also just say, but that's all we can achieve, and that it's almost like a trauma victim that said, because my heart was broken, I'll never feel love, I'll never feel acceptance. So when someone comes to them, and you know this, I see this many times, they get in a marriage, I love you, honey, I accept you, and they say, no, no, no. They block them, they push them out. So I kind of think that in some chevra, there's a kind of trauma response, because we've told ourselves we don't need that, or we're fine without that, or our mile is to soldier on without that, then we actually miss the opportunity. A person's so used to living in poverty that one day they win the lotto, and they get out of that, they say, no, I don't need the money. I don't need that income. So what Amma asked was, I don't need the money. Kol kavod for learning to, learn Torah with bread and water and sleep on the floor. Kol kavod. But to say that's the spitz of life could be, forget about you. Give the money to your kinderlach. Create opportunity. Fund a kollel. Do something else. So Hashem is giving us an Or Chadash. It's not Doniel Katz's Or Chadash. Go back to the Baal Shem Tov. Go back to before that. Listen to what the Vilna Gaon's saying. That there is anyone like yourself who's in coaching, who's in therapy, who's in seeing what's happening in mindfulness, seeing what's happening in IFS or EFT or these breakthrough trauma therapies, EMDR, that we see there's new possibility, there's new hope. And we see that those things are in this forum. We don't have to be so frum, can I say that, Lashon, to push these things away. Tati is giving us a baton. He's giving us a new opportunity, and we have to embrace that. And as I was saying to you before we started the recording, I think that there's an Indian that I see sometimes when talking with people in the sugya around the world, that is, if a person only knows their Daled Amos, my wife, my husband, my two kinderlach, oh, what's this meditation stuff? What's this Deveka stuff? We're fine, we're good. These are what do we need these terutim for? What's the kash they've been asking? When you're a mishpia, and when you're mishpia and you travel around the world and you speak to other mishpiim, people running communities of hundreds of thousands, right? You speak to gedolim. I've spoken to big rabbanim in America, and I've literally sat by their table. They've literally cried to me in pain and sadness and bitter. Literally, I could name who they are. I don't know if they want me to name who they are. People the chevra, the oilam knows and the oilam holds of, right? And they're like sabachan, because all the mishpachas, all the kiddos, there's so much brokenness, there's so much disconnect, there's so much frustration and disappointment. I'm not saying everything is bad for all our communities, but it's what we've done after 2,000 years is moividik. We're here, we're stark, we're learning, right? But we can acknowledge validation, yes, but we can acknowledge that there's opportunity, there's new madrigas we could achieve. So I think that, as my Gemara Rebbe used to say, you'll only appreciate the teretz if you're holding by the kasha. And any psychologist, any therapist, any mishpia, any rebbe in the Torah world that's real dealing with someone beyond themselves in the Daled Amos, that sees the challenges we're facing in emotional disconnect, in mitzvahs anashim milamada, in trauma, in pain, that's a part of our communities, as well as all the other bracha in our communities, then they are more open to terutzim. They're looking for the teretz, right? They're looking for new mahalach in Tikkun Midas. They're looking for new mahalach. It can be outside the Torah world. It can be inside the Torah. It can be in the Svarim that I just didn't look at and pay attention to recently. And Hashem is giving us a tremendous opportunity. Why turn it down? It's not something I was taught by Rabbi in Yeshiva. There's lots of parts of Torah I never lived by Rabbi in Yeshiva. Baruch Hashem, he gave me his chelik, and there's other chalakim. And there's no reason for us to be afraid. There's so much richness in our own Masorah that we haven't, what's the word?
Developed.
Tapped into, brought out, developed, or just remembered that is there. And I think this is it's a kufa of tremendous bracha and opportunity. I think we don't have to be afraid. We can trust in Hashem. We can trust in our Masorah that He's given us all the batanas we need. If you want to hold by the will of God and other tzaddikim, that yes, certain shef and chiyas before Mashiach will actually come from the Chatzonius, right? And that we could take that. We could take mindfulness. Right, and even that was Buddhist, but it wasn't really Buddhist because it actually came through secular Jews, and then we actually look at it and we go, wow, I'm learning secular Buddhist thing, and we actually go, well, if you open up the Piet Zetzna, Rebbe Dakshar of Avekim, it's literally there word for word. So did I really take it from the Chatzonius, or did they just remind me something that was already on my Masorah to begin with? So I think if we're looking for terutzim and we trust deeply in Hashem and our neshama and Klal Yisrael, I think we give ourselves permission to be open to new blessing and new healing, and that's the nakuda I'm focused on.
So this prat could be very tricky, because on one hand the Yidden are still here, after all the years in Golus, like we're called Ank Sheyoref, and now you're saying to do things a little different. So it can be hard. What you mentioned is also from bringing it from outside worlds. People are scared. There's a lot of spirituality out there, and once many people are there anyways. So for those, okay. So we're not talking for them, but we're talking about the people that are trying very hard to stick where they are and not change and not look out, and they're hearing these ideas of there's so much out there. And bring them in. You mentioned like Torah Begalos. We have it by us, but we don't see it. You can see it over there, and then bring it in. A lot of people are scared of even going there by the spirituality, by the Goyim.
Coach Menachem, I honestly feel with all my heart, and I have to be careful what I say right now. If we would just open up and see what's in our own Masorah, the one safe I've always learned, and start learning the rest of the Svarim as well. Everything we need is there. Everything is on the daf already. Holding as my chelik is to understand what's happening out there, understanding what's happening in here, and saying, what is the shiluv we're going to make to help place all in the best way, which is what the tzaddikim will talk about doing. But I really, really feel that, and by the way, the Vilna Gaon says this, and by the way, I can show you other Hasidic Rebbes that discuss this Indian as well. If we are closed off from seeing the truth of our own Masorah, the full HD, full spectrum of Torah, that means if I want to learn Musar and I don't want to learn mindfulness because I just want to learn Musar, but mindfulness isn't a Musar, but mindfulness isn't a Bizesna, but I don't know about the Bizesna. So once I start puzzling different parts of Torah, then I'm left chasser, and when I'm chasser, then like many Yidden in Lakewood and Borough Park and Flatbush that I know, students cheva, they are all running out. Rabbi, can I learn yoga? Rabbi, I'm doing breathwork retreats. Rabbi, I'm doing past life regression retreats. Right? Rabbi, we're doing ayahuasca in the communities with 50 people in the room, flying in a shaman from Costa Rica. Right? It's because I believe it's not because it's all out there, and I'm quoting Svarim. I can quote you word for word the tzaddikim. I said I'll share Makos if people are interested, but they say it's because we are not able to be makabel the depth of our own Masorah, that the oynish, so to speak, which is a scary word, is that we're left with a certain busha and akna to have to go get it from somewhere else. But as the Gaon will say, and as other tzaddikim will say, at the end of the day, we're going to find it all was there in Torah. Like the amount of people that I've spoken to, some of them are Rabbanim, and Rebbe is giving a shir in yeshivas, in Chadarim, that they've come to me with the shaila, I read Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you know Eckhart Tolle is, right? And not only was the deepest work I've ever read in consciousness and helping myself, and I teach it to my Bachram, but many of them commented, one of my closest friends said something, he says, if you go in Israel and you go into a secular bookshop and you find the Eckhart Tolle Sefer translated into Ivrit, it mamish just reads like a book of Chassidus. It's just textbook Chassidus. So they all say, so can I use this? Is it mutter? Is it asa? Doesn't he mention Yoshka in one place? Is he Christian? What's he doing? So what's fascinating is that it opens up a whole new mahalach in their own avodas Hashem. Yes, I'm using the word avodas Hashem mamish, but literally everything he says, I can show you word for word in this Sfarim. So is it that we're getting secular knowledge, or is it that we've disconnected from the depth of Torah knowledge, that we're condemned or blessed to at least that it comes in from another place and another path? And I think that's the only way to look at it. I can argue, depending on who I speak to, why we have to integrate secular stuff. If you're not comfortable with that, great. Can we please just integrate the beauty of all of Torah, of all the paths of Torah? And we have to realize that we're chas. We have to realize it's a time of nisayon for Klal Yisrael, and we have to be willing to pull depth. Do we acknowledge that we need experiential devekas? Do we acknowledge that we need tikkun midas? Do we acknowledge that we need hislavas and the kavanah tefillah should be moivadik every day? If we acknowledge that, and we think we would be 10% better, 100% better, so then now let's talk. Now we're holding back the kasha. Now let's talk at teretz. Where do we have to look to find opportunities for Klal Yisrael?
So I feel many people are not in the kasha. I'm saying they're in pain.
Right.
They are lost. They are shut down, and they don't know about it. They're still, they're trying. They're just trying. And in the back of their mind, they're thinking Hashem is going to give me schar for this, and they're like, I'm doing the right thing. So they're not in the kasha. But for those people who believe and know that there should be more, there should be emotions, there should be the vekas, there should be. For those people, they are searching. But many people, the fear, they feel we need to have a solid Rebbe for this, because how am I going to go into those svarim and take out how am I going to figure it out? So that's another fear that they have. I need to have.
Coach Menachem, I totally hear, and this fear breaks my heart. I realized that part of my growth in a certain area, I had to make the svarim my Rebbe. Because I realized there was no one there to teach me that. It's interesting that after I got into the Sfarim in depth and I understood what they said, then I actually met Rebbes of the world that were teaching this and we could connect to them. But there's a certain Adam Gadol who I adore. He quotes Svas Emes. He's a Litvisher Adam Gadol. He quotes Svas Emes, but you don't get much more chassidus out of him. And one time we're talking in Torah and I brought up something from the Tanya. He says, I've never learned the Tanya. And I said, you're holding in so much Torah, and why never learn Tanya? He said it's a very hard work. You need a Rebbe to teach you. And when he said that, I have so much covered for this year. It's unbelievable. I adore this year. But I wanted to scream at him. I was like, the Gemara is complex, and you need a Rebbe. But you learn how to learn it. Nobody ever says, I don't learn the Gemara because it's hard. No one says, I don't learn Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch L'maisa is a complex sugya today. No one says, I don't learn it, I don't open it up. You learn how to learn it, and you find someone to ask shilas to, and you ask, what's the halacha l'maisa? And you start, if Art Scroll in English is fine, and you listen to Daf Yomi Shmuz online, and you struggle with it. But why disconnect ourselves? Why do we have this thing that, who am I to open up the Sfarim? If you open up Medi's Sfarim for the Baal Shem Tov, and he'll say, here's an avoda, just read the Piazesna, here's an avoda, here's a technique, just do this. It's less of a sugya to be mavara than most of what we learn in yeshiva most of the time. It's a practical eitzah. Take this eitzah, take this ajoga. If you still don't get it, so nebuch, you need someone like me to unlock it for you, or other tzaddikim to unlock it for you. I'm not saying Masech Chas v'Chila, but it's there. But why do we have such a mistrust? Who am I to open it up? Who you would open up Shas? Who you open up Midrashim? You think you understand anything that happens in Bereshis and the Chumash? But we learn the Rashi, we read the Ramban, we get involved a little, we ask some questions and we go deeper. I don't understand where the fear comes from. And I think if we take it down, we can get busy. What's that?
That's how they grew up.
That's how we all grew up. We understand.
So do you give shiurim in the Piazetzna Sefer? You just start giving shiurim from the Sefer, from the Piazetzna.
I mean,
knows what you're reading.
We have hundreds of shiurim. We have an online program, and we give shiurim around the world. I found that my chelik is not to give a shiur from one Sefer. Itchy Meir Morgenstern has this line that we're a door of Likud. of Malaktim, the ikar of our door is to bring everything together, to see the cloud behind of them. So when I give a shir in Devekas, I want to see what all the different svarim say, and I want to bring down many different makoros. I want to compare them. What's the Sada Sheva B'neihem? What's a different mahalach they're all using? So many of my shirim I'll use the Piazetzner Rebbe, but many of my shirim I'll use many tzaddikim, many mahalchim. Right? I just gave a shir for a few weeks that showed the commonality in the mahalach between Rabbi Nachman the Balatanya and Rav Yisrael Salanta. And not only is the commonality of the voda, it's unbelievable how they use almost identical words to describe different techniques of Tikkun Amidas, but it's unbelievable how common they are. So for me, I love to show them all together and to show that what they're really saying at the core. That I always say, be Chassidic, do Musa, whatever you do, but do something. Have a mahalach that works for you that's gavaldic. And if I can show you 20 and you can choose one, then that's fantastic. You don't have to do mine, but you have to know what's out there and you have to know what's possible. And then you have to choose something and get building.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And as a coach, I work with many people, just helping people finding themselves and waking up that emotional side. Logic, Baruch Hashem, today we have a lot of smart people. People are successful. People can tell you pshatim. People can tell you understanding what they understand, but they're disconnected from their hearts and disconnected from
the
themselves.
longest distance in the world between 2 points is between the head and the heart, right? That's the nakuda.
Right, and it takes time till they realize, talking about the inner child, talking about giving it what it needs, understanding yourself, and being okay with yourself, which is for many people so hard, depending on how they grew up, what messages they got, to get them back to a place of you're okay. You don't need to perform and do what you're doing to be. And
what a chiddush, Coach Menachem. Which sefer are you quoting that from? You're not quoting that from a sefer? I don't want to hear it from you. But if you're oisik at that, for so many yidden, with all the madregas and all the chumas we have, that nakuda that you said is just nowhere to be found. And they can't function without that.
I find that people don't even know what you're talking about. And they walk out saying, "What?" He's like petty. Like a little kid. What are you talking about? The inner child, and they're really what they're missing is that real self, that you. And if there's no you, there's no connection with Hashem. You can't meet Hashem if you're in the room, because people can't be in the room with themselves. So can I ask you, like, for people who are not connected, for people who don't know what we're talking about, what would be different? Where would they feel different? Like Shmoneh Esrei, they get up. What different? Well, they don't see it by their Rebbes, because they don't, you're just seeing from the outside.
What would be the difference if they began to take a depth of these kind of avoiders?
What is it that we're looking for?
Wow, the question is so broad and so obvious, and a good kind of obvious that I don't even know where to begin. I'll throw some things out.
When should they start?
For beginner, okay, let's start the most literal interpretation. Okay, the most literal interpretation is you're supposed to daven Shemona Esrei with kavana, okay? And there's a discussion, what's the geda of kavana? So the simple pshat is that you put your attention on all the words that you're saying. You paid attention to the words you're saying. But most of halacha and the Svarim, they don't reject that, but they say that's obvious. But the ikka of tefillah is the voda shebalev, Rachmana liba bai. Right? So the ikka is that you're supposed to be feeling passionately the words that you're saying. You're supposed to be overwhelmed with that yearning, with that love, with that connection to the words. And then another level is, again, people know the Makoros that discuss this, but it's this whole idea that the ikka kavan of tefillah is the kavan of Hashem, that you feel Hashem is with you. Now, what does that mean, I feel Hashem was with me? I know God's in the world, I know God's creating everything, but I know I'm experiencing God. So that is a mitzvah from the Torah called Devekut. What does it feel like? It means that when you daven, you feel so connected to Hashem and the light of Hashem, shining through the oisius, that you leave your Olam Hazeh for a few minutes, for a few moments. You're less worried about work, about stress, about the kindlach, about your learning, about everything. You feel surrounded in tremendous love, tremendous goodness, bracha, tav, the yichud, the unity of Hashem. And that's what tefillah could be on a 3 times a day for you. Is that really practically possible? I believe that it is. I believe we've taught people how to do that. And if a person dedicates themselves to that, it's possible. What would their shalom bias look like if they had unbelievable midah rachamim and love and feeling Hashem is guiding them, and all the things that their spouse is throwing at them, they don't want to attack back at their spouse. They realize, Be'emes, I needed to hear that. I need to work on that. I need to take a class for that. And they felt so much light and love and confidence in themselves, right? That they're not threatened by the other. They can be fully loving and accepting and present and compassionate. What would our tefillah look like? What would our emunah look like in our nisyonis in life, in our greatest challenges in life? If I could close my eyes for 5 minutes in the corner of the room, as the Balatanya says, Rabbi Nachman says, say the Shema, put my hand over my eyes from the chesed hay alma, from the illusions of this world, and actually feel into my neshama. Baal Shem Tov says that devekus, emunah is really devekus. That I strengthen my emunah through this challenging time by feeling into that light within me of such love, of such connection, that everything is mamish for the good, is taking me to the good, and that takes down all the anxiety, the pressure, the stress of the Nisayan I'm going through, and I feel like Hashem is with me, I'm fine, I feel it in my life, I feel it in my life. When you open up this possibility, your Torah is more geschmack, you have many more chedushim, your Avos Yisrael is more geschmack, you feel a love and a Keshet Yidden, you love yourself. The Rabbi Nachman says you can't love Hashem till you can love yourself. You know, that's one-on-one coaching. That's exactly who you're speaking to. So Rabbi Nachman says that. So there's a makor for us. But what does that mean, Lamaisa? Love myself. I'm doing mitzvahs. I do averas as well. Okay, I have to do more tshuva. What does it mean to love myself? To accept myself? Hashem could do it for baby Ishmael. You know, Basher Husham. Why can't he do it? Why can't we do that for us now? It's a deep nakuda. So these are just some of the possibilities. Tikkun midas. We all have midas to metakun. It's a very shver thing that Chazal says, that a Talmud Chacham without das. They say not very nice things about them, right? So I had to think for many years, what does it mean a Talmud Chacham without das? How could you be a Samuel of Shas and not have any das? But that's exactly the Nakuda that you're speaking to. They have no inner awareness of self. I'll tell you a very personal story. When I first came as a Baal Tshuva to yeshiva, I was in good yeshivas. We were learning very stark. And, you know, for many years, but I always felt there was something chassid. I could never describe it. And there was one Rebbe who I adored, and he used to give over the most amazing agaritas from the Vilna Gaon, from the Ramchal, just beautiful agaritas, and it was so deep and so beautiful. I always felt there was something missing. Many years later, I went to a second yeshiva, and a Rebbe stood up in the yeshiva, and he was giving a shmuz one time, and he started talking about when he wanted to be a mechazik in his own avodas Hashem, and he went into a mikveh, and he decided for himself that if the mikveh was hot, the hotter the mikveh, the more schar he would go in, the more tshuva he would be doing. And he pushed himself into these boiling hot mikvehs until he ended up making himself mamish sick and wanting to not go off the derech. But as he was talking this out, and it's so silly that I have to say this today, in yeshivas, and they've all gone, oh my gosh, it's true. As he was talking this out, as a Baal Tshuva, I'd been in yeshiva for 4 years when I first met this Rebbe. It was the first time I'd ever heard a Rebbe talk about their own inner world. Now, I try to teach deep things, and this is not a deep thing, but as what you're saying, this is the beginning of all the depth. It was the first time I'd ever heard someone not talk about the sugya, not talk about the Musar Haskell for Klal Yisrael, and not talking about the Shechina or the Halacha L'maisa or the Chumah we need to follow, but talking about. And when he gave over that Maisa, it was the first time I ever felt Trum in my life. I felt halachic in my life. It was the first time I could acknowledge, wow, there's a part of me that wants to come closer to Hashem. There's a part of me that tortures myself. There's a part of me that guilt trips myself. There's a part of me that's not patient or compassionate or loving with myself, right? And that was the opening, that there's a self in there. There's a self that I need to bring to Torah. And that's what I think, a Talmud Chacham without das. A Talmud Chacham without das can know all the sugyas and all the terutzim and all the Kabbalah and all Pshat, Remesh, and Sod, but they still don't have a self. And if you don't have a self, then you have a Yetzer Hara, and it can be destroying you, and you don't even see it. You don't know it. don't learn about. But Volby talks about these things in so much depth and so much sensitivity. Again, I can give all the Hasidic sources. I'm trying to give expanded. So read Pirkei Kinyan Das to understand, besides Ali Shor, how someone like that approaches these with unbelievable sensitivity. But I have an inner world. It's amazing that you could be in yeshiva for many years and we don't talk about that. With many bachim, when mishpachas, say, well, I meet with their kinderlach that are going off the derech, one of the things that breaks my heart out, when they tell me what life was like growing up, and this is not true for everybody, but it's definitely true consistently for some of them, as I'm sure you know as well. What I hear is there's so many people that walked into the school they're in, the seminary, with the ruler, the Rebbetzin with the ruler. You sneeze, Shem loves you if it's 2 inches but not 1 inch, whatever. And there's no one that ever acknowledged that they have a self, that they have an inner world. And that inner world has light and it has darkness, and it's a bilbul, it's tohu vohu in there. But when you begin to put your attention on it, then it's the first time you contact yourself. And then there's the opportunity to say, wow, I have pain, I have guilt, I have frustration, I have shame, I have love, I have a she'ifa for a connection that I don't know how to get. In fact, I've told myself I'll never have that connection. And I'm mekana when I actually say, honestly, Coach Menachem, I think one of the things that triggers some of the people when they complain about these things, can we say this out loud? I'm going to offend someone now, but
let's find out.
I don't want to offend someone. I feel that there's jealousy there. I've seen it many times with Cheva. When a person's trying to be as stark as possible, Baruch Hashem, stark as possible, and they get a little too catnistic, a little too emotionally blocked, and then they hear about Tshuva having a spiritual experience, or they hear someone in their community, psychedelics or devekas or meditation, part of the pushback, I think, is a kind of jealousy. And I feel that in the core of their heart. They try to puzzle it. What's the makor for that? Who are you to say that? Baal Tshuva Buddhist rabbis, all that kind of stuff. But I kind of feel it in the core of their heart. And I say this with Rahmanas. There's a part of them that feels it's not shaykh to them, and that they've convinced themselves they can never get it. And it's a trigger sometimes to see other people doing that. And I think if we could be aware of it in the world and validate that concern, and then take down the fear, and then say, maybe it's because I would also like to experience something. Obviously only from Kedusha and only in the Derech of Torah. But I think part of it is a kinna and a frustration. And it's hard to see other people doing it when they've told themselves that maybe it's not shaykh to them.
Wow,
I think that's one of the many complexities here.
That's also something that they need to be aware of. Very deep concept, and I tell it many times to rabbis in the classroom. If you come into the classroom and with your coffee because you went to chasana last night and you need your cup of coffee, and then it happened to spill. So you have some rabbis who go on as if nothing happened, as if nothing happened. Then you have rabbis like, I needed this yesterday and I'm tired. So they hear a person there.
Human.
Wait a second. He also has those struggles. So what does he do when he has those struggles? Let's see. So then you can connect to them. So yeah, there are. So you're mentioning that there are.
I just want to say, just reiterate what you're saying. There's a feeling that I sometimes feel with Mishpiyim. It's not really from Gaiva, but it's just a confusion that we need to show that we're more chashuv, more together, kuloto in that kind of sense. And it's a shtickle busha to be human, to acknowledge I have it in the world. But the ikar of chinuch is by you modeling that you have it in a world. Then you give the Talmidim reshus to realize that they have it in a world. When you give them reshus to acknowledge they have it in a world, then you're showing them the real foundation that their life of Torah and Avodas Hashem is built on. It has to be built on their struggles, on the reality of who they are, on their das. If we pretend that none of us have a real world, we build the infrastructure of Torah and Halacha and Chumrah, but it's not on a strong foundation. Suddenly our kids just disappear. Suddenly they went off the derech. How many times a year? Suddenly no one suddenly goes off the derech. It's because that inner world that we've blocked out, the koiches and nefesh in there, we've stopped acknowledging and seeing them there. So then suddenly someone goes off the derech. It was building for many years. I hear from the parents that children suddenly went off the derech, but when I listen to the children talk, you should have seen that coming 15 years before. So I think that, just to summing up that Nakuda that you were saying, when we as Mishpiyim share a bit of our inner world, we give in the deepest way without teaching it. Deeper than teaching is modeling. It's a shimish tamudei chachamim, right? We're seeing how they really live it. And when we do that, then that opens up in a whole new level of self and a whole new place for Hashem to have a mishkan in their life, in a real life, with its struggle, with its light and its choshech all together. So I just wanted to really just validate that Nakuda you're saying, and say that's a big thing for me as trying to be a teacher. What kind of Rebbe do people really need? It's someone who's open and authentic with their own self, because I think that's a deeper limud than anything else we can teach.
And they say that's when they pick up. When you say a story,
Yeah,
a story about somebody
their
else,
eyes open,
or a story about yourself. What happened to me yesterday?
yeah.
And that's when everybody's there, and they're like, "Wow!"
Yeah, the kishkas are there. You see the whole group. When you talk about yourself, everybody zooms in, and that's not. A lot of Rabbanim will say that's bidyev, that's nebach. It's nebach because I've lowered myself to them. But you understand where the Shekhinah is. That's not the lowest, it's the highest. When the kishkas care, when they matter, that's where we have to build them to be B'nai Aliyah, from that Nakuda.
So I believe there's a lot of healing that needs to go on. I'll tell you the truth. 3 weeks ago when we had Dr. Tepfer talking about psychedelics, and it's in a therapy room, so everybody was listening and understanding. There's a new research, and
he kept it a Daled Amos away. It's
something that works, and it's amazing. Not talking about spirituality, talking about there's so much that we have that we need to let go, and this works. Talking about therapy a year or two, and they can do it just by taking it 3 or 6 times in a therapy room, which was amazing. When you came on, I wasn't ready that you're going to come head on with this spirituality. And that's talking about new things, meditation and dvekas. That's beautiful. Taking it to the psychedelic part that's where I think we lost many, that thinking that this is maybe we can bring Mashiach that way. I was saying it sounds like.
Hang on. Did we lose many? Because I've heard thousands of people respond in a positive, and I've seen about 7 or 8 emails of concern. Did we lose? Do you really think
you're
we
right.
lost many?
For those people, no. For those people who are searching, for those people who are open-minded, we've, I guess, some that want to understand. We've never heard such a thing in our life, and this is totally new. So this is just if you can share something that can help us a little bit with.
Fine. Let me do a bekitza summary of everything I said, and I think if you put it in context, it's really less radical than I said. Number one, the majority of my introductory speech was talking about that we need tikkun midas, and we need ruchnius, and we need hislavus, and we need devekas, and we have that at the Svarim. And if we don't start teaching that, then people will be left to run around. They'll be left to say, well, I'm disconnected emotionally, or to say, well, I want to be connected, I have to get it from the Goyim. That's the Messias. I've discussed that with many Rabbanim, many people, everyone talks about that. It's a known issue. And we have to bring that back. That was the ikka of what I said. And I dafka set it up that was the ikka of what I said. And then I said, and here's something else happening. And I talked about psychedelics. And when I talked about psychedelics, I split it into 2 very, very clearly. I says there's the part of mental health in psychiatric medicine, which is where the research is being done. And I said, from my basic understanding of halacha, if the mumcha is saying that it's proven, there's evidence, it's scientifically supported to be of value, then it's no worse than Prozac, it's no worse than anti-anxiety, it's no worse than any of those things. It's cheaper, it's faster, it gives person the breakthrough, and it happens to induce a state which is exactly in line with what the Sfarim said, which is better than Prozac and better than all these kind of things. So first of all, the ikar I talked about was devekas and tikkun midas, as are in the Sfarim. Then I opened up a sugya into psychedelics, and there's 2 things I said. One is that will become more and more available, and it's gavaldic opportunity, right? It's been a long time since we've had a revolution in the psychiatric world for mental health, and this looks like potentially it could be. And there's one other thing I added, and I said, and I made a chiluk. I said, there's a possibility that people could use that for their own spiritual seeking and their own spiritual development. And that is a possibility. And not only is it a possibility, that's not Doniel Katz saying it, people are doing it. Literally millions of people are doing it. And many from people in the world have started to use it as that. And they seem to become more spiritually connected, more open. They come back to Torah mitzvahs stronger, etc. And what I said on that, Coach Menachem, was that's for bigger people than me to decide. That will be a shaila for Rabbanim and Gedolim and Tzaddikim in the next few years. And I already hear on the street from different cheva, some are more resistant, as you imagine, and some are like unofficially under the table. Yeah, use it, go explore, come back. And I could give many more examples of that, but given what I know in the world, and this stuff is illegal. I'm not going to name names and name about, but there are Rabbanim that are open. If a person needs that, if he felt disconnected all his life, and one or two openings can connect it to Hashem, that's interesting. That's a possibility. And what I said, La'anias Daiti Mamish, is Tikkun Amidas and Devekus and Avodas Hashem, as the Baal Shem Tov discusses. That's a chiyuv. We better get our act together right now today. For psychiatric medicine, that's a revolution, and that's coming in soon. And I imagine that most Rabbanim will give a big ascama to that. I know Rabbanim that are already sending people to that. And then I opened up a third category and said, what's going to be for spiritual experience and opening? That has to go to bigger people, but people are already using it, and it's a very interesting thing. So if you put it in that context, for the least secure from person, I already regret saying that. If we don't have Hislavus, if we don't have Avos Hashem and Avos Yisrael, if we can't feel the mitzvahs we do, if we can't daven with a kavana, then our kinderlach will go off and do Buddhist meditation. Our kinderlach will get exposed to drugs. They will get exposed to different things because we never show them the path of Torah can acknowledge their heart, can acknowledge their soul, and give them a beautiful path to experience that. And then I just mentioned there's other things coming in that are going to push us on that, because if we don't, then we are already seeing many secular Jews coming in the queue of circles saying, I've just had the highest experience of my life with ayahuasca. What do I need your wrapping the tefillin to my arm for? What do I need to read through the art scroll for 20 minutes each day, all these Hebrew words I don't understand? And he said, well, because it gives an experience to connected to Hashem. And they look at you, and I think this is a Likud of Emes, that says, you guys all think you're connected to Hashem, but you're mumbling through these words every day. I had experiences where I really connected to Hashem. And I think we all have Turism. We're smart people. We know how to answer these questions. But I think if your heart is open, I think there's a kasha they're asking which is deeper than we can answer. And I believe that we have to find a way to start delivering on that level. Did I address the psychedelic part enough? I can't hear you, Coach. Wait.
Yes. I think, like you said, it's new, and you just put it on the table, and obviously they're doing research, and let's see what happens. But the concept is fascinating, and to me, I believe we all need healing to connect. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of compassion and whatever people need just to be human, even compassion for yourself. There's so much healing, there's so much that you need to do just to stop and connect with yourself, that this if you want, go do it with a therapist. You don't have to do it you don't have to wait till the research is fully done, but go do it with the therapist.
Right. Coach Menachem, this is Aleph base of Torah, is that before Matan Torah, before Klal Yisrael Zocher Matan Torah, they spent 49 days working on Tikkun Amidas, taking out the tumor, building the lave. 49 we know is the ikka of the lave. And this is all the Sfarim say. This is why we have Sfiras HaOmer each year before Matan Torah, because you have to build the mensch, right? You have to build the mensch before they can be a kli kibble for something greater than them. And I can't imagine, though I can imagine, surely people listening to your show, this is, with all the different guests and all the different sugyas and subjects, this is the core of what you're speaking to in 1,000 different ways. Is that we have to, if we're talking about kids going off the derech, we're talking about our community at risk, if we're talking about all the subjects we're talking about, it's this nakuda. How many svarim, from the Vilna Gaon to the Baal Shem Tov to Chazal, say the ikka is tikkun amidus. The ikka is tikkun amidus. And we still don't teach that. We still don't teach that in seminaries. We still don't teach it in yeshivas. We even the Ramchal, we learn it from Mesilas Yesharim, but he's not really teaching practically how to do things. Not in the same way that a therapist knows how to really go into midah attack and that. So we're a little out to lunch with what all the Sfarim are saying is the ikka of Torah, and there's a consequence that if you're triggered by the concept of Doniel Katz brings up psychedelics, ignore the psychedelics. Focus on the tikkun amidas part. Focus on the devekas part. Chasa and the ikka that is costing us. It's costing us, and that's the painful point. Again, if you're holding by the kasha, you're going to appreciate the tourism. But if you're not holding by the cash, if you're like, well, fine, we're doing fine, we're doing fine, then you're going to be surprised and shocked. There's I heard a story as a marshal to this. I don't know what I should name the Rebbe. Again, a big Rav in America that everyone loves and adores. He told me this driving this car one time. We were talking about these sugyas and how they need to come out to Klal Yisrael. And I was sabach and I tried to bring them out as Kahila, and everyone came back against me, and I put down 50 pages of Makoros on the table and said, this is not me, this Ram. There's still resistance. And this Rav was trying to give me chizik. And the ik of the chizik was, you have to be patient, you have to be patient. But the story he told me, I'm going to change some of the facts. There was a town in America where a lot of kids were going off the derech, and when the kids get off the derech, they used to go to pool halls. I don't know, you say pool halls to play billiards pools? What's that called? Billiards pools? What do you call them there? Pool, okay. So everybody was so upset because in these pool halls, who knows what happens, who knows what they're selling there, what they're doing there. So this Rav told me that in one Kehillah, from Kehillah, probably close to where you live, a pool hall for fun kids to go. That if they're going to if they're so off the deck, they're so struggling, they're going to go anyway. At least them go to an environment. There'll be some fun people there. There'll be different mishpir walking through. So I was told by this Rav that when this person set this up, there was one Rav in the city who became furious and said, you know the bittul Torah you're going to create by creating such a thing? And he fought him tooth and nail. He tried to get them to close it down. He got them to process and to protest. He got everybody to go past and protest, a whole big milchama. And so this Rav told me, he said, I want you to know that many years later, that Rav's son went off the derech. And when he went off the derech, where did he used to go? He went to the pool hall. And the Rav told me, the Rav that I was speaking told me about that other Rav, that he went to that man and said, many years later, thank you. Because you gave my son a place to go when he wouldn't have had the place to go. And that makes me realize that if you're holding by the kasha, you're seeing the pain, you're seeing the challenges when you're dealing in our communities. I'm not saying all the communities are full of pain and challenges, we're full of blessing and bracha and wonderful things, but it's also there. It's also part of our story, also part of a narrative. If we acknowledge the challenge, then let us work together to find extraordinary solutions. Wow. And if we're not, then we're going to puzzle the solutions when they come to us. We have many Terutzim. He's really a Buddhist rabbi. About Shivas, what do they know? Chassidus, I don't know about Chassidus. It's Bittul man, it's Bittul Torah. We're not open to new things, they say to me, as they're sitting on Zoom, hearing a shir. All this is a new thing, right? So it's this line of, let's look at our Kinderlach in the eyes and see what they're yearning for and give that to them. And I think that's where the bracha will be for our people.
Very powerful. Okay, so I want to thank you again for your time, and I guess we have to continue do some research.